You cannot say one is better than the other, it's just different approach to explore your own, explore your living experience. I think that, see, I meditate now 40 years. And the thing is, you get out, it's just life becomes much more precious, much more rich, much more interesting. And how to say, I think it's very simple, but for me, what I get most out of it, how precious it is just to be existent, to be alive, to exist, to be aware. No, there's nothing special. You don't need to do anything. No, it's just you become aware how beautiful it is just to be to watch something or hear a sound or a smell or taste, touch. You know, so it's just so beautiful, and I think it's when your mind gets calmer, you know, more tame, so you just appreciate things more fully. And any situation, I mean, you see this glass, so one way of looking at it is just, you know, fully appreciating what is there with your sense consciousness, right? So you see the bubble rising in the water, uh, and the shape and the color, and, you know, that glass or that situation is unique, it will never reproduce itself again. You see? So the uniqueness of the experience, it's a fragment in time that will never repeat itself. And I think that's what some artists see. You know, when you see some painting, what they paint is that instant moment that uniqueness of that they want to, you know, their own experience of that moment. You know, then they make some art out of it. But each one of us, you know, we can have that experience. You know, often I see paintings, I say, well, you know, yeah, you can put a painting, but you can also just look at the flowers, and that's a painting. You know, look at the glass, that's a painting. Any moment has that quality of being new and fresh, and if you have these open eyes, you know, each moment. You know, I remember, you know, when I was a teenager, I once took LSD, and a pile of garbage was beautiful. True, you know. So the beauty is in the eyes of the holder, right? So, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's your mind that, you know, yeah, it's the mind. It depends completely on the mind. And with meditation, your mind takes away all this veil of superimposition, and then things appear again fresh and new and beautiful. Yeah, anything, you know. It doesn't matter what it is. And that experience of freshness and newness, when you have that, it turns into bliss. You see, it's the label that, you know, it's beautiful, it's ugly, and then pleasure and displeasure happen. You know, it's the mind that creates all this. If you leave it as it is, it's just blissful, it's just beautiful, it's just blissful, but not in the sense that we understand this word. You know, it's something else. It's just a naked awareness, you know, which doesn't have these labels. You know? And then you have another way of looking at it. Then you use, you know, then you look at it in time. You know, where did that glass come from? You know, so you see the past with your mind. At the beginning you use imagination, but then the imagination turns into another way of seeing. You see, you imagine where this this glass came from, where the water came from. So you see that the cause. You see, this doesn't exist out of time. So there are cause and condition that brought it about. Right? So you can go back into that glass, you know, who had the idea to make that and how it was made in a factory and things like that. How did it happen that you make glass out of sand? So you boil sand, you bring it at a certain temperature, and then it produces glass. And then the water, how come, so it comes from some spring or something, then it's treated with various things. So you see the history, and that expands your mind into one direction, and then you expand the mind in the other direction. What's going to happen to that glass and to the water, things like that. So you see it in time. And then another direction, you try to find its essence. You see? So you break it down, break it down, break it down. And then you don't find the glass, you don't find the water. Ultimately, there's no water and glass there, yet superficially it appears as water and glass. So there's many directions where your mind expands, you see, through meditation. Simply by being, your mind, starts seeing more than what you normally see, because normally we're not really there. We are in our thoughts, in our, how to say, our attention span for an experience is very short-lived. We're always distracted with our thought, with our habitual thinking. So we're not really there, and we don't have the full experience of this present moment. It cannot reveal itself to you because our head is too busy. So basically, meditation doesn't make you, kind of, how to say. So nowadays, there's a lot of emphasis on studying, Buddhism, learning many texts, and But sometimes this acquired knowledge can become more another distraction than a help. Sometimes you become, like Lama Yeshe used to say, people become Buddhist scholars, but then actually their inner experience is as poor as ever. They just study a lot of information, but they are not able to bring this information from the head to the heart. Their inner experience doesn't change, just their knowledge. And often, because in the West we have this culture of studying, of learning, so we take this topic and instead of integrating them, we just learn them intellectually. So that's a little bit the danger that one can have, with one studies too much, with not the right, with the right state of mind. You see, for me also it comes down to, there were shepherds in Tibet, they didn't even know how to read, let alone write, and they became Buddha. They became fully enlightened being, without studying, they just had a teacher and they followed the instruction of that teacher and they made it, So how is that possible? How is that possible? For example, this is the story of Lama Tsongkhapa. He was this great scholar and yogi. He had to ask a friend, a shepherd, to ask question to Manjushri, because that shepherd could see Manjushri and ask question to him, but Lama Tsongkhapa couldn't do that yet. So he had to ask that shepherd, please ask Manjushri, about this and that. So it's interesting, how to say, it brings forth an interrogation point in my mind. How come? So there's another aspect in this, is that the purity of your mind. There's an aspect of it is, if your mind is pure, if your mind is clean, it just sees more. A complex mind, a very, yeah. Sometimes your concept, your idea, come in the way of your experience. So for example, some geshe, they say, so they become these Buddhist scholars, and then they go into retreat and they say, I had first to unlearn what I've learned, in order to experience. I had first to unlearn, to have again this clean mind, this pure mind that is able to see. Because you see, how to say, in order to experience the glass in its freshness, if I have all this concept, the Vaibhashika see it like the Sotamatra sees like that, the Prasangika see it like that, and you have all your conceptual analytical mind that tries to understand your experience. So all these concepts, while they on one side are useful, on the other side they can be an obstacle. So you have to know how to use them so that they are helpful and not a hindrance. So I think what one discovers is that, I don't know, it seems that in the West one thinks that if the more you know, the more you become. But the reality is a little bit opposite, is that the more you spiritually grow, the more you think it's so simple. It's actually nothing. Enlightenment or realization is actually nothing. It's just simply being. It's like Lama Yeshe used to say. It's like taking away blankets. Blankets of concept, blankets of idea, and the reality is very naked, very very direct, very unfabricated, unelaborated. It's very, reality is very simple. So often, if we have that scholarly mind, you think you have to build up your understanding, you have to build up your knowledge, you have to build up your understanding of things, But it's just another mental construct. It's actually, the experience goes into the opposite direction, is to let go of all this concept. So to have a certain, you see, I'm not saying that the concepts are not useful, but if you rigidify them, solidify them, make them concrete, then they become an obstacle. Whereas if you see them just as a map, a map is okay, but you don't travel on the map, right? The map is useful, it gives you a picture, but it's not the reality. So all one study about the spiritual path is not the spiritual path. The spiritual path is something that you live, that you experience. It's not the conceptual understanding. Conceptual understanding is just that, a conceptual understanding. So you can see the mystics of all spiritual tradition have this simplicity, there's something very simple and very direct in Anyway, what do you think? That's where I get that, after all these years, is that actually, often we think, that the answer is in a book. actually the answer is not in the book. Answer is inside ourselves. You don't find the answer in the book. The book is learning about the map. So the book speaks to you, oh, compassion this way, compassion that way, compassion that way. But that's not compassion. Compassion is when you have compassion inside, right? So to read about compassion is not compassion, right? It's learning the map. No? So it's useful, but it's not the real thing. All right, maybe we'll make a 10 minutes break, or maybe 15 minutes break and have a cup of tea.